To those of you who have been following the events in Sambhal, you know that the Archaeological Survey of India has now said that it is very difficult for it to determine the original nature of this now disputed site, which is called the Jama Masjid of Sambhal. Today I make an attempt to explain to you why this difficulty has in fact persisted for centuries, and this is not of recent origin. What we today know as the Jama Masjid of Sambhal was declared a protected monument by the Archaeological Survey of India in 1920, which means that any kind of repair, renovation, maintenance that had to be done to this monument had to be done under the guidance of the Archaeological Survey of India. However, now the Archaeological Survey of India says that between 1998 and 2024, many such alterations have been carried out, and these include constructions both inside and outside the mosque, the use of plaster of Paris and bright paints, which make the determination of the original nature of this monument very difficult. So, any monument would require some kind of renovation, restoration, reconstruction. So why is it a problem that this has happened in the Jama Masjid? Well, precisely because the Jama Masjid is a protected monument. I quote from you the Archaeological Survey of India Act of 1904, which says, destroying, removing, injuring, altering, defacing, or misusing protected monument, or removing from a protected monument any sculpture, carving, image, bas-relief, inscription, or any other like object shall be deemed a cognizable offence within the meaning of the Code of Criminal Procedure 1898. The same act also says that if the said monument is being used for religious purposes, its maintenance and restoration once again falls upon the collector of the district, who shall carry it out under the guidance of the Archaeological Survey of India. Thus, by the very nature of being a protected monument, no kind of alteration, painting, restoration, repair of this said monument could have happened without the Archaeological Survey of India's intervention. So now the ASI, in an affidavit that it has submitted before a court in Sambhal, said that when various attempts to survey this structure, the Jama Masjid, were fobbed off, it finally was able to make a survey only in June 2024. This was made under the superintendent archaeologist of the ASI's Meerut Circle. Once again, I quote from what the ASI has now submitted to court. It says various interventions, additions, modifications have been made to the structure. Once again, I quote, the use of bright colors is abundant in the main section's interior, and the overall appearance of the centrally protected monument has been significantly degraded. There are 8 petitioners in what is now known as Civil Suit number 182 of 2024, which has been filed before a civil judge in Sambhal to take ownership of this structure. The leading name in these 8, of course, is that of Harihar Jain, who is also a petitioner in a number of other suits where Hindus want to reclaim what they believe were originally temples, which were taken over by the Muslims later. The suit, a copy of which is now with the week, cites numerous Hindu texts and also reports from the Archaeological Survey of India to prove that what it is saying about this initially being a temple of Vishnu is well documented, and that it was taken over to be a mosque only in much later stages. In fact, when the week spoke to Harihar Jain, he very clearly said that he had studied numerous historical texts to determine the nature of this monument for 8 months, and that this is no frivolous suit. According to the religious texts which have been quoted in the petition, this was originally a Sri Harihar temple which is devoted to Vishnu. Also, Sambhal is the ancient form of Sambhal was supposed to be the city which had a huge mound at its center on which this temple was located. Sambhal is a place which, again, as per the suit and according to the text that it quotes, holds a great significance for Hindus because it is in Sambhal that Kalki, that is the last avatar of Vishnu, will be born. Sambhal in fact is supposed to be a city which was crafted by Lord Vishwakarma himself at the start of the universe, and many of you might be knowing that Lord Vishwakarma in fact is the deity of craftsmen. This original temple was partially destroyed in 1526 by the invading armies of Babur, and the remaining portion of the temple was used as a mosque. The most telling piece of evidence cited in this prayer in fact comes from the Baburnama, which is a memoir of Babur's time. It records that Babur visited Sambhal in 1529 and that the city and portions of this temple had been saved for him by one of his lieutenants. According to the petition, several archaeological surveys conducted in Sambhal between 1874 and 1876 itself had noted that the original nature of this structure was lost. These surveys by the ASI note that there is definite use of Hindu motifs and that the dome has been made in a manner which is reminiscent of mandirs. However, the same report also said, and I quote here, that Musalman bricks had been used in the construction of the other portions of the temple. Same report again says that there is use of plaster, so the original material or the original kind of bricks which were used to construct this structure are very difficult to ascertain. In fact, the only kind of Hindu motif which has been found, the Hindu engraving which has been found in this structure, is that of rosettes. I quote for you again from this report, which says, the principal building in Sambhal is the Jama Masjid, which the Hindus claim to have been originally the temple of Hari Mandir. It consists of a central domed room upwards to 20 feet square, after which it goes on to give the dimensions of the other portions of this structure. Now, if we move on to documents of a later time, the Gazetteer of Moradabad of 1911 also notes that a temple no longer exists where it was originally claimed, and in its place there is a striking mosque. So it brings us back to the question of the original nature of this building. Now, the first documented repairs of this building took place in 1657. The Gazetteer of Moradabad, to which I just referred, notes that the structure had been surveyed in 1874 by one Mr. Carlyle, who at that point itself had again emphasized that it was difficult to determine what the original nature of this structure was. Carlyle had, however, concluded that the conversion of this structure to a mosque was of recent origin, and that it had not been a mosque for many years before that. One other text which has been made use of in the petition before the Sambhal court is the Ain-e Akbari, which was written sometime between 1589 and 1600. This text again talks of a mandir called the Hari Mandir. This is again one of the many documents which has been cited by the Hindu side to bolster its claim. Thus, it brings us back to the original question: how do we determine whether a structure was a temple or a mosque? In the case of the Jama Masjid, this is so knotty, and this question has persisted for centuries, that what the courts are now faced with is actually a very fraught question.